nationally connected. A polar vortex winter blast breaking cold weather records across the country where wind chills are well below freezing, and how long the extreme temperatures stick around.
I've said from day one, we're concentrating on public safety threats and national security threats, but I said if you're in the country, you're not off the table.
An exclusive interview with border star Tom Homan, what he says he needs to see before he's satisfied with the security inside the country. And extremely unsettling egg prices continue to rise in the face of a major shortage, what the Trump administration is now suggesting should happen to curb the rising costs. This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David. Arctic blast, hundreds of millions of Americans facing a sprawling winter storm wreaking havoc across the United States tonight. At least 10 states from Louisiana to Delaware under snow and ice alerts. All of this coming a day after the same storm system brought 11 inches of snow to Missouri, 8 inches to Kansas. Freezing rain and sleet falling in Oklahoma and Arkansas, leaving roads extremely dangerous. And just take a look at these snowy conditions right here. This is in Kentucky's Marshall County. On top of that, we are talking about life-threatening cold. 93 million Americans right now under extreme weather advisories extending from the U.S.-Canada border to the Florida Panhandle and even southern Texas. Over 200 cold temperature records could be smashed across the plains and the south as wind chills plummet below zero, and wind chills hitting 60 below in North Dakota. The extreme weather forcing dozens of school closures across the country, and medical experts warning folks with certain health conditions like arthritis and asthma that during cold like this, those conditions are prone to worsen.
The best thing is staying inside. If you are going to go outside and you can't avoid going outside, making sure we're dressing in lots of layers and making sure that those are well insulated layers.
Forecasters say the extreme cold should lift by Saturday. Right now, an investigation underway after another deadly midair collision, this time between two small aircraft at the Marana Regional Airport that's just outside of Tucson, Arizona. After the collision, a Landcare crashed right near the runway and it caught fire. Both passengers there dying. The other plane, a Cessna, landed safely. Both of its passengers survived. The Marana Regional Airport is an uncontrolled airfield and does not have an air traffic control tower. Pilots are responsible for delaying their positions with other planes. We're still working to learn more about what exactly led up to the collision. But after a flurry of recent plane crashes, Americans appear to have less confidence in the safety of air travel, though most do believe it's still generally safe to fly. According to the latest Associated Press NORC Center poll, 64% of U.S. adults say plane travel is very or somewhat safe. That's down slightly from last year when 71% of people said that. After just one day of talks between top American and Russian officials, relations between President Trump and Ukrainian President Zelensky are beginning to deteriorate, with Trump calling Zelensky, quote, a dictator. The National News Desk's Atrel Nashar reports from Washington.
3 years of U.S. policy to make no decision about Ukraine without Ukraine has been shaken to its core in just 48 hours. A dictator without elections, Zelensky better move fast or he is not going to have a country left, President Trump wrote in a social media post Wednesday morning.
Unfortunately, President Trump, I have great respect for him as a leader of a nation that we have great respect for, the American people who always support us. Unfortunately, he lives in this disinformation space.
Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky said that hours after a high-level meeting between U.S. and Russian officials in Riyadh that excluded Ukraine.
Today I heard, oh, well, we weren't invited. Well, you've been there for 3 years. You should have ended it 3 years. You should have never started it.
Even some Republicans disagree with President Trump putting blame on Ukraine.
It is quite clear who started the war. It was absolutely Russia at Putin's directive.
Vladimir Putin is a gangster. He's a gangster with a black heart.
Another point of contention is the president's decision to have his team start in-person talks with the Russian side.
President Trump is not even engaging the NATO alliance in this conversation about the future of Ukraine. In fact, he is hardly engaging Ukraine.
The Ukrainians are part of the conversation. But what's not happened in over 3 years is any meaningful dialogue with the Russians.
Some fear the Trump administration will cater to Russia as they watch President Trump rail against how much the United States has spent on aid to Ukraine, $183 billion as of the end of fiscal year 2024. Funding Trump calls a gravy train.
We're just not doing this out of the goodness of our heart. We support Ukraine because U.S. national security and our economy rely on it.
President Trump is already entertaining the idea of an in-person meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. It would be the first for the country's leader since Russia's 2022 invasion. When asked if he would meet with Putin before the end of this month, which is coming up quickly, Trump said probably.
Wow. And Atra, what more do we know about plans for that potential meeting?
Well, just big picture, getting something on the books before the end of this month, the shortest month of the year, of course, would be logistically difficult just for any international presidential trip. But one this sensitive comes with a whole host of additional implications. Now, based on comments from Secretary of State Marco Rubio and National Security Advisor Mike Waltz yesterday, Saudi Arabia would likely continue to be middle ground for talks, at least at a lower level, lower than the presidential level. So it's possible that's a viable place for Putin and Trump to potentially meet in the future. But as for Russia's response, Putin says, quote, "I would like to have a meeting, but it needs to be prepared so that it brings results," AKA, I don't want to meet just to meet.
Well, the stakes are high on this one, that's for sure. Ajral Nashar reporting for us from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much. The USDA now scrambling to undo a series of Doge firings from over the weekend. The agency says several employees who were fired had been working on the government's plan to fight bird flu, and they are now working to get them back on board. This is the second time wrongful terminations have happened in the last week. On Friday, nuclear safety workers were also let go, and they had to be reinstated. As for the Trump administration's response to bird flu, specifically associated with egg prices, they say they do have a new plan. Kevin Hassett, director of the National Economic Council, says the problem is that farmers are killing off millions of chickens when one in the flock gets infected.
What we need to do is have better ways with biosecurity and medication and so on to make sure that the perimeter doesn't have to kill the chickens. We have a better, smarter perimeter.
Hassett didn't offer many details about how officials plan to slow the spread among those other birds. Culling millions of chickens per month, though, is causing egg prices to skyrocket and causing huge egg shortages. Officials might suggest trying to vaccinate chickens against the bird flu, but that would be a logistically and financially challenging task. Tonight, in a New York City courtroom, a judge has closed the day without ruling on whether to drop the corruption case against Mayor Eric Adams. The judge weighing a request by the Department of Justice to throw out those charges. Judge Daleho asking for patience as he considers the issues carefully. Adams has denied accusations of accepting campaign donations from Turkish officials in exchange for expediting the opening of a Turkish consulate in Manhattan. And it comes as calls grow louder for Mayor Adams, Eric Adams, to step aside. 4 top NYC officials resigned just this week as a result of the controversy. Queens Borough President Donovan Richards says the mayor must show a commitment to New York City's values if he wants to remain.
Really, the conversation yesterday was centered on how do we make sure that we have a New York City that is actually functioning. Right now, it feels like a lot of chaos and controversy, and we need a city that's really functioning because people are hurting out there.
Richards says the mayor should be focused on pushing back against the Trump administration, which is targeting DEI, public education, and clawing back city allocated funds. IVF treatments are a miracle for so many who may struggle with fertility issues for a variety of reasons. But for one Georgia mother, it has become a nightmare that she could have never conceived of happening. Our Emily Deanne has the story of a woman who is suing a South Carolina fertility center after she gave birth to another couple's baby.
I considered all of the potential consequences of what might happen if I went through in vitro fertilization. Never once did I consider I might birth someone else's child.
That was the reality for Marie, who went through an IVF journey with South Carolina-based Coastal Fertility Specialists.
Coastal Fertility had transferred to Christina an embryo that belonged to another couple.
Murray says she immediately knew something was wrong when the baby she delivered was a different race, but she says it didn't matter.
I spent my entire life wanting to be a mom. I loved, nurtured, and grew my child, and I would have done literally anything in my power to keep him. My baby is not genetically mine. He doesn't have my blood. He doesn't have my eyes, but he is and will always be my son. To carry a baby, to fall in love with him, to deliver him, to build that uniquely special bond between a mother and a child, all to have them taken away.
Now she's suing the fertility company over the IVF mix-up and pushing for nationwide regulations when it comes to fertility clinics.
I'll never be the same woman. I will never fully heal or completely move on. And part of me will always long for my son and wonder what kind of person he's becoming.
Coastal Fertility Specialists has locations across the Lowcountry and in Savannah, Georgia, where the lawsuit was filed Tuesday. The company said, in part, Coastal Fertility Specialists deeply regrets the distress caused by an unprecedented error that resulted in an embryo transfer mix-up. While this ultimately led to the birth of a healthy child, we recognize the profound impact this situation has had on the affected families, and we extend our sincerest apologies.
Errors like this should never occur in a fertility clinic. This is the cardinal sin.
Despite the traumatic IVF outcome, Murray is once again pursuing becoming a mother and will be receiving treatment from another fertility clinic.
That was Emily Deanne reporting. Andrew Lester, the man who just pleaded guilty in the 2023 shooting of teen Ralph Yarl, has died. All of this while awaiting his sentencing. Lester was set to go to trial this week for shooting a teen who mistakenly knocked on his door. But ahead of the trial, the 86-year-old with deteriorating health entered a guilty plea. Yarl, who was 16 at the time of the shooting, was shot in the head and suffered a traumatic brain injury. Coming up, border crossings are hitting new lows with arrests and deportations on the rise. In an exclusive interview, hear why border czar Tom Homan isn't satisfied just yet. Then an update out of Oregon, what we now know about the victims of a deadly avalanche. And crypto is becoming more mainstream. Which state is making a new investment in the online currency? Pope Francis tonight is alert and responsive. That's according to Italy's prime minister. She's the first confirmed outside visitor to see him since he has been admitted to the hospital. The 88-year-old Francis has pneumonia in both lungs and an infection, but the Vatican says he is breathing on his own at this moment. Italy's prime minister says Francis was joking around as always, and the Vatican says he did have a peaceful night and ate his breakfast as normal this morning. On Capitol Hill, President Donald Trump urging Congress to pass the House's version on a budget that has not yet been voted on. Last night, the Senate passed a procedural vote on their budget plan that includes border security, energy, and defense policy. It is the first step in a two-part approach, but the House has not backed off from trying to get everything into one bill, and that includes tax cuts. On Truth Social this morning, the president praised both chambers but said, quote, "We need both chambers to pass the House budget to kickstart the reconciliation process and move all of our priorities to the concept of one big, beautiful bill." The House is on recess this week, but expects to start the process of voting when they return. The Trump administration is pausing all applications filed by non-legal migrants from Latin America and Ukraine while officials identify fraudulent claims and enhance vetting procedures. These permits were initially set up by the Biden administration. The Trump administration also plans to close the office overseeing Afghan resettlement as officials investigate some 200,000 applications of Afghan nationals. But one of the most significant changes to immigration policy in the last month has been the focus on removing those in the country illegally. National correspondent Christine Frizzell spoke with border czar Tom Homan about those changes.
Since Donald Trump took office, the White House has really been focused on two sets of numbers: the number of those showing up to the southern border and the number of those arrested inside the country. And so you said you are satisfied with the numbers now?
I'm happy with the number. I'm not satisfied. I won't be satisfied till every criminal gang member is eradicated from this country. Every illegal alien with a criminal conviction is eradicated in this country. Then we open the aperture up to those who are illegally in the United States. I'm not going to be happy to get rid of all of them.
White House border czar Tom Homan says he's directed Immigration and Customs Enforcement to focus on the worst first. But many of those arrested so far do not have criminal convictions, including recent examples of migrants showing up for court appointments in states like Tennessee, Florida, and New York and being detained by ICE agents.
They're showing up as required by law to these hearings, and then there's people waiting for them. What's your response to that?
Are they in the country illegally? Then they should be arrested. I've said from day one, we're concentrating on public safety threats and national security threats, but I said, if you're in the country illegally, you're not off the table. It's not okay to be in this country illegally.
But isn't it okay to come and ask for asylum and then show up for your
You
hearing?
can make an asylum claim, but let's talk about the asylum claims. In the last 4 years, you got millions of people making asylum claims. But if you look at immigration court data the last decade, clearly almost 9 out of 10 of these people don't qualify for asylum. It's about prioritization. If you're in the country illegally, you're not off the table. We're going to prioritize what we do, but if we run across somebody that's illegal in the United States, we're not going to instruct ICE not to enforce law. That's what the last administration did.
Homan has continued to push for more funding and resources for the mass deportation plan, and it looks like he just might get it. The Senate has just advanced a bill that includes $175 billion for border security. That includes money for the mass deportation plan and construction of the border wall. At the White House, I'm Christine Frizzell.
Christine, thank you. The identities of two skiers caught in Oregon avalanche are now confirmed. Authorities say it was a couple from Bend, Oregon, Terry and Susan Skurza. The two were in their 50s and appeared to be avid, somewhat professional skiers. It happened earlier in the week in Oregon's Central Cascade Mountains. The exact cause of the avalanche is unknown, but they say it was likely triggered by the skiers themselves. Local outdoor enthusiasts reacted to the news.
There's a lot more people out in the backcountry on skis or out in the backcountry on snow machines or snowmobiles. And that does translate to more search and rescue efforts, more injuries, more fatalities. And it's a total double-edged sword because a person like me, I love when people are outside.
New developments tonight in the investigation of an international burglary ring targeting the homes of NFL players. Federal prosecutors have charged 7 Chilean migrants with stealing more than $2 million worth of valuables from professional athletes. The men face charges of conspiracy to commit interstate transportation of stolen property. And if convicted, they each face up to 10 years in prison. Taking a look at your health. If you've had a mental health coverage denied by an insurance company, a new resource may help you get exactly what you need. Medical reporter Liz Bonas shares the story behind it.
Hey there, everybody. After struggling with his own daughter, a dad became a mental health advocate. And now through the website Cover My Mental Health, he has tools that could help all of us when a mental health insurance claim is denied. It's estimated this happens to about 1 in 5 people who need treatment for conditions such as depression, anxiety, and substance use disorder, Joe Feldman told me.
But we don't know exactly because insurers are not obligated to report what number of claims they deny.
He says this is just one of many reasons 50 to 75% of those struggling with a mental health condition don't get care. It's also one of the reasons he launched the website covermymentalhealth.org.
People should be encouraged not to take no for an answer, and that a website like Cover My Mental Health can give them the encouragement and the specific resources that they can use to get started today.
The site provides reply letters for everything from telehealth to not medically necessary denials for both patient and providers to adapt as needed. Joe had to sue his health insurance company to get his daughter's care covered.
It took us 3 years from the time that she got the notice that the care was not medically necessary until we won the federal lawsuit. It's a long, long time.
Time, he says he hopes he can save all of us to avoid potentially life-altering delays in care. Now, you can search Cover My Mental Health online for more information, and all of the information and downloads on this site are free. With your health news, I'm Liz Bonus reporting.
Liz, thank you. Coming up, an overnight apartment explosion inside the rescue mission to bring the residents inside to safety. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhood covering the issues that matter most to you. From residents cleaning up after flooding in Kentucky to the state of Texas considering an investment in cryptocurrency. We are taking the pulse of America, and we begin in Ohio with some frantic 911 calls after an apartment building collapsed.
The apartment building next door blew up. Yes, there's people trapped inside of it.
It looks like the building had collapsed or something blew up inside. I went over there briefly. There's somebody in debris that's calling for help.
These calls came in around 2:20 a.m. Tuesday morning, saying that an apartment building at 59 Parnell Avenue had suddenly collapsed. Once crews arrived, they quickly got inside the debris and rescued 2 people.
So our crews, we got a couple of our rescue crews out here, and we started taking the building apart piece by piece. Once we got all that disassembled, crews were able to get inside and take a look around, and we confirmed that there was nobody else inside the apartment.
We can buy land, we can buy gold. I think the state of Texas should have the option of evaluating the best performing asset of the last 10 years.
Under a new bill currently before a Texas Senate committee, the Texas Comptroller's Office would maintain a reserve of Bitcoin.
which would be made up of funds allocated by the legislature, as well as, somewhat controversially, gifts given to the Texas government. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick has named it a priority. Governor Greg Abbott, who hasn't commented on this legislation specifically, said as recently as last November, Texas should become the crypto capital this session. Other lawmakers expressed different concerns.
I do have a great concern with billionaire tech bros owning branches of government. I don't want it happening.
Everywhere you look, there are signs of just how high the water was. Mud and debris are everywhere, including inside many people's homes.
I've never seen water move the way water has moved. It was, I don't know, once it capped over the back, it just filled up like a lake in here.
The family rushed to get the dogs out and make sure everyone was safe. Luckily, they were able to get to high ground. But they watched as emergency crews brought in a rescue boat for some of his neighbors.
That kind of blew my mind. It got deep enough to actually get one in here.
Once the water receded back into its banks, Jones and everyone else has been surveying the damage. A lot has been ruined, but all that can be replaced.
I'm blessed with the people I've had come and help me. The community, and then the friends that I've had behind my back. Without them, I know I couldn't do this myself. I'm completely broke down right now, and they've picked me up and they've carried me.
The odds of an asteroid impact to Earth are increasing. What you need to know about the chances when we return. Monitoring what's happening in space, as some say the odds of a newly discovered asteroid hitting Earth just went up again. The probability is now more than 3%, or a 1 in 32 chance. This is up from under 2% just 2 weeks ago. Asteroid 2024 YR4, as it's called, could collide with the Earth in December of 2032. Most likely it would hit over the ocean, but it is called a city killer because it would cause catastrophic damage to a localized area if it hit land. But again, those chances are slim, just 3%, still worth keeping an eye on. That does it for this edition of the National News Desk. We do invite you to join us again for more coverage on America's top stories this evening, including that Arctic blast impacting millions. We'll see you then. I'm Amira David, and thank you so much for watching.